Welcome back to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protean Machining, and this week I'm happy to welcome Chris Zappettini back to the show. What's up, Chris?
Hey, living the dream, baby. Had a really good couple of days here.
Yeah.
But I got a cool hand tattoo. So
yeah, you did.
Sweet.
Yeah, Simon, that was one of the questions, was tattoo updates, and you got a pretty sweet one on your hand. What is it?
It is, it's a galactic pie, essentially. And so what I did is one of the guys that did my stomach in London, but he lives in New York City now. And so I drove down from Boston to have him do this. And I gave him the prompt, which is a Carl Sagan quote. If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. And that's what he came up with. And
I love it.
Pretty fucking sick. Yeah, crushed it.
That's great. Well, I mean, that is definitely positive news then. You've had kind of a couple rough days, but
yeah.
I'm glad you got that done at least.
Yeah, exactly. Then hung out with the serving boys last night on the way back to Boston.
I was wondering why you were out that way. I was like, I know you're in Boston, and I know they're not, so...
Yeah, they're like 3 hours away from me, so it's not like terribly far, but it's not terribly close either.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I drove. Yeah, it's interesting because Poughkeepsie to New York City from where I'm at is the same distance. It takes about 3 hours to get to either. So I drove, and then it was like 2 hours dead north of the city, and then 3 hours back home. It was a long-ish day.
Yeah.
But
especially with tattooing in there too.
Yeah. But generally, pretty solid. And so you went to Germany.
I sure did, man. It was amazing. Like it felt so much longer than the week and a half we were gone.
Oh shit. Yeah. So let's break it down.
Yeah. So we flew in, and the first basically week. So we flew in, like we left Tucson on a Monday and got into Zurich on a Tuesday. And so then it was Tuesday through Friday in Gosheim and around there for Hermla's open house. And yeah, it was amazing. The first day there was multiple groups from the US. And so we all kind of rotated on whether you were going to see the main manufacturing plant or their casting and sheet metal facility. And so we did the main manufacturing plant the first day, and they take you on a guided tour. Ours was Gunther, the CEO, took us on a guided tour,
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, Gunther is just amazing in general. Like throughout the entire trip, anytime I had a technical question, people would be like, "Oh, go ask Gunther. He's the guy who knows." And I'm like, "The CEO?" They're like, yeah. He's the guy who would know best. I was like, okay. And yeah, I come to find out that he's kind of worked his way up from like service tech all the way up to CEO now of Hermla USA.
That's hot.
Yeah, it was amazing. But walk in and you're just struck by how few people are there. Like they had, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 people manning a ton of machinery, making all their parts because everything is automated.
Yeah.
Their whole philosophy is anything that can be made on a Hermla is made on a Hermla. So there's just a ton of Hermla machines, which is great to see. It definitely shows that they trust their machinery.
What other equipment did they have in there?
So I'm going to screw up the names of them, but the only machinery they had in there were machines of the size they don't produce. So they had 3 Hellers that were bigger than a C62. They had 2, I can't remember. B&W is the brand, but I can't remember what they actually stand for. But they're giant 5-axis mills.
Yeah. And
the Hellers and the B&Ws are all loaded from this giant pallet racking system with just like a ton of pallets.
Mm-hmm.
And the B&Ws are not only bigger than what they make, but also have, I want to say like 170 tools each or something like that.
Just a few.
Yeah, just a few. And everything's just dialed. Like all of the big automated cells, like the Hellers and the B&Ws and some of their bigger, they had a lot of, I think they were either C52s or C62 mill turn ultra precision ones making parts, like doing all the turning on their trunnions and things like that. And all of those machines had central coolant and like chip briquetter or chip shredders that would then go away to a central like chip briquetter system. And yeah, it was just amazing. There was so few people and everything was running. Oh, and then they had I'm definitely going to forget this one. I can't even remember what the initials were, but they had two of these absolutely massive machines that like they were, calling the mother machines, because they're what all of the castings get loaded onto to get remachined after all of the steel inserts are in them.
Oh, wow. That is a big ass machine.
They're like part of the foundation. They are not like a machine you set on the floor. They're built into them. They had a massive KUKA robot as the tool changer for this machine.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was absolutely bananas. So we did that. We saw everything there. We went through their building where they're building all of the automation, like all the RS systems. They also build the C62 and 52 in that same building and are kind of running out of space because they're doing so much automation. Then we went upstairs to their apprenticeship program and saw that whole thing. And I mean, gorgeous apprenticeship program. They had a few manual machines and then a bunch of Hermlas. They had weirdly a 3-axis C400, which you'll basically never see. They make most of their machines in a 3-axis configuration if you're crazy enough to buy one. But
yeah, that seems like it's insanely expensive.
Yeah, I think it's just for companies that are like, we want all the same machine and same control, but we need a 3-axis machine.
And
but yeah, they had a C400, a couple C200s or 250s. I think a C22 maybe with a RS system on it. So like, as an apprentice, you're getting to learn not only all of the machining and caring for these machines, but all of the robotics and PLC stuff. And it was just great to see.
Sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was day one.
Did you get to talk to anybody that was doing the apprenticeship program?
No, not really. We ended up going back on Friday, and I'll get to that, but not really. I didn't get to talk to anybody that was running in the actual apprenticeship program. Day 2 was the casting and sheet metal factory. They have an entirely different site for that because they just ran out of space, basically.
Is it far away?
Man, I want to say it was like 30, 45 minutes away by bus.
Okay. Yeah.
Not terrible. Like they really try to keep everything as close as possible. If they can't make it in-house, they source it like absolutely as close as they possibly can. But they built this other facility because it was close to the highway and they were able to find land, and it's in an industrial park. It's not, Hermla, you like look off the balcony of it and it's a small town. It's not, I mean, I don't even have a good comparison city or town. It would be like if Telluride had a giant freaking factory making CNC machines,
Yeah. I've heard that's kind of the case. You see that a lot more in Europe than you do here. Who was it? One of my aerospace customers, they do a lot of like composites. And I guess the place that I was at when we recorded before, and they bought an autoclave, and it was like the same thing where the whole town was basically the factory, to the point like they built hotel on site of on the campus of the factory just to house people that come to visit. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seemed like that to me too. Like a lot of these companies, it's such a different ethos where if you start a company, you plan on keeping it around as long as you can. You grow in your same spot and you try not to move and you try to employ the people around you and all of that, which is very different to here. All the companies as they grow, they're like, all right, let's move to a big city. Let's find, bigger place. Yeah. Let's not build a giant campus. Let's find a campus or a place to build a campus. So it was very interesting to see all of these giant companies in small towns.
Yeah.
But the sheet metal and casting facility was really cool because, all of their machines, except for I think the 52 and 62 are epoxy granite.
Okay. Yeah.
So like seeing the jigs that they're bolting all of these, like the rail mounts and A-axis mount on and all of that stuff. And then they fill it with the epoxy granite and then they, vibrate to like rid of all the air bubbles, and just seeing all of that was really, really interesting. And then their sheet metal factory is again, super automated. Like they have a bunch of Trump lasers and laser bender cutters. And I mean, it just massive pallet racks, automated, like robotized pallet racks that grab the right material, feed it to the right machine. It, cuts, bends, stamps, threads, all the stuff that they need to, and it spits off parts.
Sick. That's awesome.
And then they do all the welding there too. And like the welding rooms, Brad and I walked through, we're like, this is where they weld? Like it's so clean. How, what?
How
You know,
are
they're
they
like,
doing this? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there was like a little bit of grit you could feel on the floor, but the floor was clean and every workspace was clean, and not like clean for a welder, like cleaner than
clean.
most shops that I know of, or, you know, most houses I know of.
Which is crazy. We ended up doing like a little welding project in our shop in Utah, just cutting tables and re-welding them together, and the whole fucking thing was covered in dust. It
Right.
was like, it was everywhere, and it was very little cutting and welding going on. I could not imagine like how big it has to be for a machine and to be clean. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was insane. I wish I had more pictures of all of these places, but you know, obviously they're pretty protective of where they're making the stuff. But yeah, so it was just very cool to see both sides of that. The casting area was also very clean. And then the third day we went to Lang, which was also like, that was a customer visit because Lang uses a ton of Hermlas.
Yeah.
And again, like it was just so striking going everywhere. And granted, these are companies, you know, kind of at the top of their game, but like everything was so automated everywhere and nobody was rushing. And nobody, like I never saw a single person like hot footing it around a shop because they're like trying to get something done. Everybody's just meticulously doing their stuff. Not a single person at any of the companies either perked up or freaked out when a CEO came by. But, you know, you go into a lot of shops here, and the second the boss walks by, like, everybody's at attention.
Yeah, it's just a different, different mentality.
But I think it also is just the fact that like everything is so well planned out and automated at these companies that if you're doing something, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, kind of thing. But yeah, Lang, we walked in, they had maybe 6 C22s and C12s.
Oh, the
a
baby
couple
guys.
Makinos, D300s.
Oh, interesting.
A DMU 50, and I feel like maybe we saw a Grob or a Grob or two in the back. So we actually went to 2 different places for Lang. We went to their like showroom, which had two Hermlas and a Robo Drill, all with the Robotrex system.
Okay.
And that's just kind of where they do demos and they do like specialty stuff, like things that are outside of the norm. Yeah. And so we went there first, kind of had our presentation, got to watch all of the robots do their thing. And then we went to their main manufacturing facility, which again, a bunch of Hermlas, a couple Makinos. In the second building, there were a bunch of robo drills that looked like they were doing vices. Like they didn't let us into the second building really. Like they just kind of walked us through, which kind of sucked. I wanted to see where the vices were made. Like the first building that we got to like really sit in and look around, they were making all the vice jaws, which was neat. But like,
you want to see the meat.
Yeah. But it was really cool. They had already roughed all of the jaw carriers on a Lang. The jaw carrier and the jaw are one piece, with the thread through it. And so they had already been roughed. They had already been black oxide and heat treated. And they were just doing all the final machining. But they're like done in one, basically. Like they're held and go in on a Robotrex. They're already hardened. They get milled hard. They get ground, like the T slot on the jaw, like where it actually interfaces with the vise, is like plus or minus 5 microns. And that's actually ground in machine, which was kind of cool. And there I actually got to talk to one of the guys running the machines. And I was like, oh, like how many machines do you run? And he's like, yeah, like 3 or 4. I was like, oh, like how long does, one of these carts for the Robotrex run? And he's like, I don't know, all day. I was like, so you just keep tools loaded and keep the carts loaded? He's like, yep, that's all I have to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Neat. So yeah, it was also very neat to see. But yeah, on the second building with all the vices, they just kind of like walked us back through their storeroom, a bunch of stock, and then walked us out the back. And we're like, cool. I didn't need to see your stock room, but I appreciate it.
This is where we pack stuff and keep it. And you're like, all right, cut tight.
Yeah, can I go out there where the vices are being made?
Yeah, but, like, no.
Yeah, but it was really cool. It was cool to see. You see all like the bite marks of their stamping units on their own pieces, and then to see that all being used with the Robotrex like everywhere was pretty neat.
Yeah. Which is probably like how it came to be. is that they needed to automate their solution. And so they're like, well, we make vices and we make a system that uses our vices to make our vices.
Right.
And then we can sell that fucking thing.
Yeah.
Because that's how the Haberly system came to be. It was just something that they built for themselves because they were just a job shop. And
really?
They were just a job shop in Germany. And they needed to make parts faster, and they had robo drills, and like really their thing is like grinding. I guess they have a really interesting grinding setup, and they just kind of dialed this thing in for themselves, and then they're like, I guess we could probably sell this thing. Now they're selling the shit out of them.
Yeah, no joke.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Oh, and then after we went to Lang, they took us to this restaurant. What was it called? It was like a playoff of Route 66. I'm spacing on the name, but it was hilarious seeing what Germans think Americans eat.
So funny.
Every single one of the burgers that because it was just like a burger place, and every single one of the burgers had cucumbers on it. It was like, so did somebody see pickles and think, oh yeah, cucumbers? And then one of the burgers that one of the guys at my table got, it was called Tower 66, and he got like the Tower 66 burger. And dude, this thing was massive.
Yeah.
Like they set it down, and he was like, "What is going on?" It had to have been, I don't know, 3/4 of a pound or like a pound burger. Like he cut it into 4 and ate 1/4 of it and was like, "Well, I'm full. That's cool."
Massive. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was good. Like all the burgers were good, but it was also like I didn't get it. 2 of the guys at our table got Caesar salads, and they're like, these are not Caesar salads. They're good, but they're not Caesar salads.
This isn't what we were expecting.
And then the last day, everybody went to Lake Constance, I think, for sightseeing. But Brad and I had to leave halfway through the day, so we just went back to Hermla to see more demos. And it ended up being the best choice we could have made because there were so few of us going back. We're trying to organize a ride back, and Kevin, my regional sales manager, texts us and goes, "Oh, Gunther will pick you up in the morning." The CEO. I'm like, okay. And he picks up, there was 4 of us, and we drive back with him. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm going to give this guy a tour. Do you guys want to come along?" And so we end up getting a personalized tour. There was 4 of us in the tour with him.
Oh, shit.
And so he was really able to talk more about things and not really move things along as much as the first one.
That is fucking awesome.
It was amazing.
That's so cool.
I wish I could have taken a picture. I took a picture and I'll send it to you off the back of the porch of Hermla, but just above where I took the picture, their spindle room, like where they assemble all the spindles and then they like pre-assemble the X and Y axis up there with the spindle because it's easier on these little custom jigs that they have. Yeah. But there's just giant windows with this amazing view. Like every time I went up there, I was like, yeah, this is where I would want to work. That's the best.
Amazing. Yeah.
So we did that for the beginning of the morning, and then we kind of changed hands and then left with Stefan Zesha from Zesha Tool and drove straight there actually from the show.
Sick.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And like he gave us a little mini tour of Zesha just to kind of give us an idea of what we were looking at. He was like, "Oh, next week we'll do a more in-depth tour, but today I want to at least show you it." Yeah. And again, like just calm, collected, everything automated, all the tool grinders just working away. Every single thing is like auto loaded.
Yeah,
it was just so cool.
So I think it was at this point, this was like factory number 3 that you saw where you texted me. This is like the definition of discipline equals freedom over here.
Oh, it was that, and it was driving on the Autobahn because we had been on the Autobahn in unrestricted sections a few times, and like, dude, they drive so aggressively there. Like
really?
Multiple times I pointed out, I was like, if I drove like this in the US, I would get a ticket for reckless driving. But granted, like they are discipline equals freedom to a fault. I think that there is like almost too many rules. At least for me, I don't want a license for every single thing I do. But yeah, on the highway, on the Autobahn, everyone gets right. There, at least with the people we drove with, there was no such thing as passing on the right because somebody was, not getting out of the way. People just got out of the way. And eventually there were a few people that, took some convincing, but you just come up on their ass and eventually they're like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I move over." Granted, it'll be unrestricted for 5 or 6 miles, and then it'll be like 100K, and then 80K, and then 100K, and then 120K, and then unrestricted. And dude, back up and down and up and down. And there seems to be no rhyme or reason. I'm sure there is like some reason for it. But as an outsider looking at it, I was like, why hasn't this all been unrestricted? I haven't seen anything change in, an hour now. But yeah, so we went to Stein, where Zesha is. We then took the train down up to Berlin for the weekend. And that was just to meet up with Travis from Alien Tool. All of us hung out. I got to see Alien Tool. I got to see a bunch of Berlin. We rode those they're called tier scooters, but it was, like Uber scooters or whatever.
Sure.
We rode those everywhere. Like I'd never been on one. Both Brad and I were like, we had both been under the assumption, oh, these are super stupid. Why would you ever want them? And by the end of the weekend, we were like, dude, this is the best. They're so much fun because you just have so much freedom. But, oh, man, it was great. We just saw so much through Berlin because Travis lives there. So he was a fantastic tour guide.
That's sick. Nice.
But it is otherworldly dense because they have a 5-story limit in most of Berlin, or at least in the center. Okay. So they grew out rather than up. So everything is so dense. Like we went down one street for a couple kilometers, and like I could have spent a week just going through the stores and restaurants on that one street.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was just insane. Super cool though. Good food. Very, very different from the small town Germany we had been in for a week. So it was nice to get that perspective change. Berlin just feels like a big city anywhere.
Did you have issues in the small town, like language barrier wise, or?
Not a ton. There was usually somebody that spoke English around. We did kind of find out that, at least with some of the people we interacted in Schwinningen, which is where we were staying, man, they seemed so particular about German words. Like the first night when we went to dinner, almost nobody in like the wait staff spoke English. And like we walk in and there's like 12 of us or 10 of us. And Kevin goes, oh, we're here for Hermla. And she's like, shakes her head like she has no idea what's going on. Then she points upstairs and we go upstairs and like, the table's taken. And we come back down and we're like, no, we're here for Hermla. And then thankfully 2 guys who were sitting there having dinner spoke English enough. And they like asked us what we were saying. And then I swear they turned around and said, blah, 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 Hermla. And she goes, oh, Hermla. And like points us. I'm like, and I'm sure there was a difference. But like to us, we were like, I swear she just said the same word that we said and had no idea what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it wasn't an issue.
It was fine. Yeah. I had a big problem when I was in Switzerland, especially it was really eye-opening. I was like, oh shit, I probably should have learned German before I came here. Because even like, especially in like the southern part next to Italy, like they just were not into speaking English at all. Just like wasn't a thing.
Well, it was weird because the last time I had traveled was to Japan. And like clearly they could stereotype this guy doesn't speak Japanese and like be right. Yeah. Whereas I think most of us look German enough that like they just start speaking German to you and you're like, dude, I have no idea. I was the same way. I was there for 2 days and I was like, I really wish I had learned some German. Even just some basic stuff would have really been helpful.
Downloading Duolingo and like crushing it in your free time. Like,
yeah, I had a long plane flight. I should have just picked up the Wi-Fi and done some Duolingo. Yeah. But yeah, after the weekend, we came back to Stein. We did like a full in-depth tour of Zesha, which was just amazing. They are like, Stefan Zesha is one of the most forward-looking CEOs or like, heads of company that I've had the pleasure of talking to.
Okay.
The entire company, you can tell like their average age of worker is in the 30s, not in 50s or 60s.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
Like they have a great apprentice program as well. And like, he's just constantly looking for new ways and new tools and new ways to make their line competitive. It's not like, oh, we need to just keep doing the same thing. It's like, no, where is all of this going next?
Yeah. Have you tried their tools now?
Not yet. I have 3 alien tools sitting on my desk, which are Zesha tools. Yeah. They're the Iguana series. So they're carbide, that's then diamond coated and then laser resharpened.
Yeah, okay.
And they're on the tool tube, it says, I want to say that they're within 2 microns of nominal for size, and one is 1 micron concentricity to the shank, and the other 2 are 2 micron concentricity to the shank.
All right, that's pretty good.
Because all of their laser tools are remeasured and then like actually written on the carton what they are.
Because that's like 10 millionths or something. Like
5 microns is 2/10.
5 microns is 2/10.
So it's like 80 millionths, I think.
Yeah.
Which
that's
is bananas.
Pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to try some more. We saw a demo of the Kingfisher series that they have, which is like a through coolant for not super hard steels, but like I'll have to look at the literature, but I want to say it was like into the 40s Rockwell that it'll handle. And because they have a Kern that they do testing on, and I can't remember what the other ones are, but like they know what their tools can do, and like their applications are pretty spot on. Sick.
Are they testing in power grip holders?
They had a bunch of different kinds of holders. They had power grip, but they had a bunch of different other stuff as well.
Fascinating. Cool. Yeah. Because you see like the Frasia stuff, a lot of their testing or like their demo videos are all on power grip.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, Doug's got that Hermla in their tech center that he does most like a lot of the testing on, and it's like power grip and that machine.
Baller.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of rounded out the week, and then we flew home from Frankfurt, which was, man, there were so many times that day that we almost missed our flights. It was insane.
Yeah.
Like we were taking a shuttle to Frankfurt airport, and I was able to check in no problem on my phone, and Brad's for some reason kept erroring out. Like every time he would say send boarding pass to my phone, it would send him an email that's like, this is not a boarding pass, something. So I was like, okay, seriously? And then we get there, and so he tries one of the kiosks, and it says the same thing, like, oh, there's an error loading your boarding pass. I was like, what is going on? And so then it was a Lufthansa flight supported by United. So we go over to the United counter, and the line is just so long. Like we had gotten there an hour and a half early, I think, maybe almost 2 hours early. And we're like, sweet, we got plenty of time. We'll have time to go get food. And he gets in line, dude, and it's like not moving at all. And I was like, okay, this point we were both so burnt out. We're like, we just need to get home. This is already going to be a 20-something hour day of travel. This is going to suck.
Yeah.
And as he's standing in line, I overhear some lady who's like, oh, do you guys have a kiosk, like a digital kiosk? And she goes, oh yeah, it's right around the corner. And so I'm like, hey Brad, give me your passport, give me your booking number. And I like go over there, and thank God it worked. Like it printed out his boarding passes. We had already been in line for 30 minutes, or he had been in line for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I heard this, and I was like, oh, let me try it. And it worked. And then we get over there, and as we're going through, we like go through immigration, get our stamps. And then there's like a little thing that's like anybody going to the US has to go through here for document check. And as we go through it, like I go through it, no problem. And then Brad gets flagged for special screening. They're like, oh, it's just a random special screening. I'm like, dude, what is going on today? And so like he gets through that finally. And dude, we got there just as they started boarding.
What a bummer. That's fucking nuts.
And then
holy shit.
So we fly to Denver, and I hate the Denver airport. I had never been to it before. All of the signs just say like, oh, you just go wherever you want. They're like, oh, we've got security this way or security this way. And there's like nothing that tells you this is the way to go. And we go through, and the line for security at Denver had to be 200 people long.
Oh my God.
It took an hour and a little bit. And like we had I think a 2-hour layover there, and we were like, oh, cool, we can get some food finally. Nope. Got there just as boarding started to our flight to Phoenix. Man. But we made it. We got back safe and sound. I came back with a cold, which is why I've been kind of putting off this episode, because I've just been snotty and sounding like shit. But overall, just like an absolutely amazing trip. So pumped that we went. I really like, anybody who listens to the podcast knows I was already leaning very heavily towards Hermla as our next machine. And like, this did nothing to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you place an order?
No, not yet. But I am waiting for a quote right now, so I can finally see what we're in for.
Because you're going C250, right?
Yeah. But then we want the new 20K spindle, which
that's oil over air.
Yeah.
Right. Not
so it's more reliable, but you lose the crash protection washers, which is a downside.
Yeah. Just don't crash it. Easy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just be perfect.
Yeah.
We want that. We want automation prep. And then I clarified some options because at IMTS this last year, they showed a option where you, on the systems table, which is basically like they replaced the big C-axis table with just a little like bolt-on ring, basically.
Okay.
And like it has a bunch of pass-throughs for hydraulic and air and all that stuff for automation. But they had a bolt-on direct laying plate that like basically the C-axis was just a laying plate, like a 4x4 laying plate. And what I wanted to make sure is that if we got automation prep, that we could get that laying plate until we decided to go full automation, and we can. So that's what we want.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Because I think it's Berg who makes their standard automation thing for like the HS Flex.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I'm waiting on a quote for a few options. I mean, what little options you can really get on a C performance line machine.
Yeah. Does Brother make an HSK or is it all BT?
They used to a long time ago, and from what I've heard, it had some really bad reliability issues, so they knocked that off.
It's quite the mechanism.
Yeah.
Or like versus just like got it. Easy peasy.
But it'll be nice to not have to worry about pull studs. I mean, granted, you still have coolant tubes, but no pull studs. You know, you just have to maintain the spindle itself. You know, grease the draw bar. I guess it's a draw bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just, dude, it was a fantastic trip. What about you? Since the last time we talked, how are you doing?
It's so fascinating. Cause like, I mean, part of this is that book, right? The Pumpkin Plan, which is funny to think about now. Cause like last time we chatted, which was a lot more recent than all the other times, but like, dude, it was like I had a plan. It was a good plan. And we were kind of like making it work. And things were going, everybody, like my guys were on board, yada, yada, you know? And then Friday was just like devastating news, you know, where my guy, he calls me and I just need to preface this with, I'm not upset with him. And there's two things here, which is you like as an employee, you don't owe your employer anything necessarily. Like you just got to do what's best for you, yada, yada. And so my guy got an offer from our customer that was like 30% more money and stock options over what I was paying him. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take it. And it's like, cool. But that puts us in an interesting position because that customer was 50% of our cash flow. And that's just gone. I will say, and it's a weird position to be in, especially because he's a friend of mine and everything, and we'll be fine. And I'm not upset with him. I'm just like, the thing that I am upset with is just stop saying that you don't want to screw me, because no matter what way you slice it, I'm fucking screwed, right? Like, right. And it's not your fault. You're not doing it, but just don't say that part, because like at the end of the day, we're screwed. You know the situation. You knew what it was like. And good for you getting all this money. That's fine. But the situation is the situation regardless of your intention. And that, I mean, there's a whole thing with intention in general, which is it doesn't matter what you intend. You can't foresee the outcome of what you're going to be doing. So it just is what it is. The other part of that's weird is our customer is also, saying, well, I don't want to fuck you. But, you know, here's what's happening. And it's, well, XYZ would probably be helpful. And they're like, yeah, no. And it's like, okay. They're like, we'll do this. And it's like, well, that doesn't really help me. They're like, we might contract with you in the future to do other stuff. And it's like, and like, this kind of ties into the book a little bit. It's like your promise, like, I'm going to get pretty fired up about this, but it's like your promise can suck my dick. Like, I just don't care about it. Like, I'm not in a position where, and really none of us are, where it's like the promise of work, like your opportunity, it's like until I have like a PO or a signed contract, like doesn't mean anything to me, like right. At all. it's not helpful.
Quite the same, but it's almost like saying like, oh, we'll pay you an exposure. You're like,
yeah,
I don't give a shit. I need to make money, dude. Like,
yeah, it's like, especially because like I had been having conversations with these guys prior to this happening, and they knew my situation. Like I was trying to like work a deal out with them already. So it's like, it's not like they didn't know what they were doing. And again, like they're just doing what's right for their business. It's just stop saying you want to help me and you don't want to put me in a bad position when the things that would help you won't do. So it's like, just shoot it straight, man. Like,
right.
This is what's happening. This is the situation. Like, I don't like, period, full stop. If the situation is you're taking my guy and the contract's going away, just say that. Because like don't
spin it. Just say, I'm sorry, this is what's happening.
Yeah. They're like, well, we still want to do stuff with you. And it's like, well, is that contract going to start right now and be equal to the amount of money that's leaving? Because like that's what would be really helpful. And so that being said, it has been interesting. Like I was telling you, like Friday, we were going to initially record this on Friday, and that just wasn't going to happen. Like, I'm fired up right now. It would have been really bad.
If we both had the same thought. You were like, I shouldn't record. I was like, I agree. We should not record right now.
Yeah. And so I took like, most of the rest of the day on Friday off. And Friday was pretty good other than that. And then yesterday was pretty good too. I mean, like not like baby road trip down to New York, like had like, got fucking pizza in New York City or whatever. I was that kind of guy. Cool tattoo, hung out like with James, who I've been texting, and his brother. I think I convinced him to buy a lathe. We'll see. And then drove back here. And then today it's like I fired up the book again, and it was really like those first couple of chapters were very like, it was like he was talking directly to me,
Well, yeah. So let's get into what book it is. Why don't you give us the overview just for people? I know that some people reached out and they're like, what is the Pumpkin Plan? I must have missed the announcement. So what did we listen to? All that stuff.
Yeah. And so I don't remember the guy's name, but it's the Pumpkin Plan. He wrote a couple other books. Profit First is one, which I was talking to James about last night. And then he wrote The Bathroom Entrepreneur. And this one is mostly about growing your business, which is pretty fascinating. And the whole concept of it kind of came from a prized pumpkin growing. And so he had like, while he was researching Profit First, I think he met this guy, and the dude was growing pumpkins, and he like saw how the guy treated his pumpkins, and just like, because he was in business mode, he directly correlated that to business, which is like, yeah, of course, I have my good clients. I can't treat my good clients like I treat my bad clients, or I can't treat my bad clients like I treat my good clients. And he's like, when it comes to like farming, if you have dead food or whatever, like you just get rid of it, because like it's not doing you any good.
Yeah. So to jump in real quick, it's The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. And yeah, when he's talking about giant pumpkins, like I can't remember what the seed is called, but like they're, these people that he's basing this off of are competing in like the world's largest pumpkin growing contests.
Like 1 ton.
Yeah, exactly. Massive. Like car-sized pumpkins.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a very large pumpkin. It's like the biggest pumpkin you've ever seen kind of pumpkin. It's an Atlantic seed, something Atlantic seed.
Great Atlantic or something like that, yeah.
And every giant pumpkin is this pumpkin seed, basically. And I think he said that it's quite, they're by unit weight, they're more expensive than gold by like,
yeah, it was like $8,000 a seed or something, like something stupid like that.
Yeah. And they're like, and he's like, gosh, I hope I win seed for like, and it's like, what? Just one? It's like $500 or something. It's like, yeah, I'd probably do all right.
So for anybody who has not read the book yet or is going to go for a reread, I will give this disclaimer. Listen to the audiobook, because I was telling Chris earlier today over text, I read a majority of the book, like reading it. And usually I like to read the book because I feel like I get a better sense of it. But the entire time I was like, man, this guy is a total asshole. And I really don't I was struggling to get through the book because I was like, this guy just feels so pompous. And today I had to finish the last couple chapters, and I listened to the last 2 chapters, and it is so much better. Like, he's in times that I thought he was being an asshole, he's just being ironic, and like that
he's
comes
just a
through.
cheeky little guy.
Yeah, exactly. And it came through in the audiobook, and on top of it, in the audiobook, he's narrating it, and so he puts in all these asides. He's like, "Oh, I wrote this book 10 years ago." Like, at one point, he's talking about he built a business doing forensic accounting. And he's like, "Oh, I can't name any names." And then he's like, "Well, okay, now it's 10 years ago. I can name some names."
Yeah, that was awesome. It's also really interesting, like, because honestly, a little bit, the dude reminded me of Titan, just Titan, Titans of CNC, because like that guy's very bombastic. But if you've ever, like, I don't know if you've like chatted with him, like just one-on-one, but like, no, I did a little bit at IMTS just because I of one of my customers, he used to make parts for him. And so I like kind of went up to him and talked to him, and it's just very interesting, like how quickly that like mask comes off, and it's just like, he just kind of comes down to earth.
I've heard that from every single person who's talked to him.
And it's like, and that was kind of like, and the dude, this guy, Mike, he's really intense kind of when he's talking, but then when he hits the asides, he's like, "Hey, so just got to update you guys on this," and you're like, "Oh, okay." It's like, you're putting on the act, and I get it. Yeah. I always listen. So I just assumed that you were listening, because I know you do both, but I only listen. Period.
I didn't check. I usually will only listen if it's the author narrating it. This time, sure. I just didn't even check. I was like, It probably isn't. And I don't know why I didn't look, but yeah, it is. And it's fantastic. It's so much better than reading the book.
Yeah. Especially because he's like, when he has updates, he's like, that guy's business just didn't do what needed to be done, and he closed. And you're like, oh shit. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, so the book I thought was fantastic. Like, I think it's things, not to pat myself on the back too much, but it's things that Brad and I have been kind of working on outside of this or before this for a while, just because we've gotten so sick of shitty customers. Yeah. And dude, it's so funny. So I was telling Brad about this book this week, and he hasn't read it, but I was kind of telling him the whole idea. And like, one of the main through ideas of this book is like, just like a person who's growing these prize pumpkins, anything that's not going to be that prize pumpkin, you cut off. And it's all about getting rid of your bad customers. Doesn't even matter if they're nice, but they're bad customers. Like, they're not paying you on time, or they're not giving you enough work to justify the hassle or whatever. But so I'm telling Brad about this book. And so we had an old neighbor at our shop who runs this drilling company. And he came over, and he comes over like maybe only twice a year. And it's always with some fucked up piece of his drill that needs to be fixed. And dude, literally, he walked in, and we both like took a breath, like, of just like, oh fuck, it's Dan. Yeah. And literally after he left, we both kind of looked at each other, and we're like, yeah, he's one of those customers. Because I was like, for the most part, I don't think I have any customers that I need to get rid of. Like, I've kind of done that pruning already. And yeah, the second Dan walked in, I was like, oh man, yeah, he's the one that I'm like dreading walking through the door every time.
This has to go. Dang. Yeah. I'm still kind of in a pruning phase. I'm just on 3. No, I'm like 2.5 years in. And so I was, and still kind of am, in like a take what I can get mode. And yeah, the fallout of that is like, I recommended this book, and I read it like months ago, and I just fell victim to it again, where it's like, I took on a customer, and I was like, okay, yeah, cool. They're like, they gave me a PO instead of promises, and I was like, maybe this time will be different. And it wasn't. Like, I'm chasing them for money, and like while we were doing the project, they were just my ass, and now that I invoiced, I get zero communication, like whatsoever. And I know these are the guys that part that I sent you, the 5-axis one, the titanium one, it's those guys. So I know they used my program. They're using the vice that I'm trying to sell them. Like, it's happening. And it's like, what did I fucking do here? This is nuts. Some of the parts, like, and like, I've been focusing on making sure that like the work that I'm doing is bringing in money, and that the customers, like, trying to find the red flags of customers earlier on. Like, I have a customer now that I kind of like, but it's like, it's a 50-50 where they still, I mean, they pay on time and they're good for the most part, but they, like, it's this weird, I have to like make plans for them for their own production kind of stuff, so that I can like, because like otherwise they go round and round on breaking into their production. And it's like, they're like, but then they ask me, they're like, well, when are we going to do this? And it's like, I don't know. Like, am I allowed to take like your machine out of production and to set it up with what I'm doing? Can I do that? And they're like, oh, we got to talk to these guys. And then the next week it's the same. And then the next week it's the same. And so it's like, all right, well, I have my machine. I'm just going to make fixture after fixture after fixture. Luckily they're on link plates. And so it's like, I'm just going to keep busting these fucking things out. And then when we're ready, we're just going to throw it on something and keep it moving. And they're like, well, they didn't want to do that at first. And it's like, well, if you're never going to give up the machine, then we have to do something.
Right. Then it's never going to get done.
Yeah. The part that was like really hitting me hard, like when I was re-listening to it today, was the working in your business versus on your business thing, and like essentially processing your way out of the company. Because like I had a meeting on Wednesday with like a potentially like big project, like including machines and everything. It's like $2.2 million. It's cool. And it's like pretty nice parts. They're good. It's kind of easy. And it's like this, and I was like, this is how it's going to go. I would put an engineer on this, and then they would just kind of be here every day. And they're like, well, that's fine, but we want you. And it's like, no, like, I was like what? Like, that's like, and that's kind of been happening. That's like, this is been happening. I mean, my name's on the company, you know, right. And like, I'm the one that does all like the presentations and everything and whatever. But it's like anyone that works for me is like as good as me for the most part. Like, I mean, maybe not like have like all of my skills or whatever, but it's like they can do, like, I wouldn't put them on the project if they couldn't do the project kind of thing, you know? Yeah. And so that is something I really need to, that's like a big sticking point right now for me, is like, how do I work out of that? And like, what processes and things do I need to put in place? Like, maybe I have to stop doing the presentations, you know, and like, can't do it anymore, because if I get associated with it, then they want me specifically. So maybe I need to like prep my guy, because now I'm down to one, and just have him go and do these things or something, you know? Like, it's a very,
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating thing. And also, like, I didn't realize this, but like, I have been in the mode of, I just need that one project, you know?
Oh, man.
And like, it was, I didn't even think about it, but it's like, yeah, oh fuck, he's right. I've been there for like, and mostly like the one big project gets me out of my like debt situation faster. Which I'm still, now I really need to rethink that, because like I had the plan and I think we were about down to like 8 weeks ish. That's probably going to change. I got to figure something out, but it's like that one big project kind of would have gotten me out of that phase sooner. But it's like, I got to stop thinking that way. It's like, the debt is the debt. Like, that is the timeline for this thing.
Yeah. So what Chris is alluding to is, in the book, if you haven't read it, he says that a warning sign that, a lot of people that he sees that, are entrepreneurs or say they are, is we all say, oh, one big project away from making it. I'm one big project away from my books being right. I'm one big X away from some big goal. And like he says that he sees that over and over and over, and it's never true.
Never. No. And it's like, oh shit, yeah. I gotta stop thinking like, and so with what happened on Friday, with like essentially 50% of my cash flow definitively going away in 2 weeks, and like the meeting that just happened on Wednesday, like on Tuesday, me and my guy, we're kind of gonna have like a bigger meeting, and just kind of like I told him, like, I kind of want to, like, once right now, it's like 2 phases, which is like phase 1 is just get to 0, just like back to where we don't owe people money. And so our overhead is way, way lower. Or I guess it's not overhead. Our monthly expenses are way, way lower, basically down to like just payroll and like the shop. And then from there, it's like, I kind of want to like tear the fucking thing to the ground and like rebuild it. I don't necessarily know what that looks like right now, but that's where I'm at.
I mean, you're down to the number of people where that's a possibility without like a lot of pain, which is nice. Like, I mean, not to be like, oh, the silver lining, but like there is a little bit of a silver lining here where that you do have that freedom now. Yeah.
So I was talking to, he's a listener of the podcast, and now he's my customer. This guy, Weston, works at an aerospace shop in Ogden, Utah. His shop is actually like 5 minutes from my shop, which is kind of cool.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, super cool guy. And we were talking about just like how you can sometimes, if you freak out, like people want you to freak out in the face of like adversity or something, or like things are going sideways, being calm is kind of like a superpower. But I've been in situations where my customer is freaking out and they're upset that I'm not freaking out. And it's like, that's not really going to help the situation. He brought up the movie Bridge of Spies, where Tom Hanks is like talking to somebody and they go, and Tom Hanks's character goes, "You don't seem very concerned." And the character who he's talking to goes, "Should I be? Like, would it help?" And, it's like, so back to what you're saying in terms of the silver lining, it's like, I mean, it is a silver lining. I took my time to freak out, which was Friday and yesterday. And now any more freaking out is kind of unproductive to the situation. Just kind of have to get through the work that we have right now and then just strategize going forward. And that's something that has been severely lacking in my drive towards getting essentially righting the ship. Is I haven't spent any time working on the business whatsoever. I've just been doing the work. And the events that just recently took place have brought to light like the fragility of my business. And so that one thing can happen and we're toast. No, we're not toast, but it put us in a massive crisis.
Right. If you kept going the same way you are now without changing anything, you could be toast.
Yeah. And so like reading this, it's like, oh man, it's refreshing to have somebody just kind of tell you the things that are like happening to you. And it's like, and it's okay. It's fixable, and it is fixable.
Yeah. So one thing I want to touch on that you've alluded to, so you were talking about working on your business and not in it. And when I was listening to that chapter, it's the one about the airplane card, I think.
Yeah.
Where it's talking about like you have to make processes that are stupid simple so that anybody can run them.
Yeah.
It made me realize that so many of these business books reiterate the same thing that the others do. And so if you're listening to this episode and you're like, business books aren't for me, like I know plenty of people who are like, I can't get into it, or I don't understand the lesson. I think half of the reason that we read so many business books is to find the right one.
Yes.
Like so many of them might say the exact same thing in different words, and you need to find the one that speaks to you and says the lesson that you need to hear in the right words, because you know the lesson there is very similar to the E-Myth, but like you might not like the E-Myth or the way it's written, or you might not like the pumpkin plan and the way it's written, but the lesson's still there. You know, it's like all of these old adages that you hear and you're like, oh, that's so cliche, until it applies to your life. And you're like, oh, I really wish I had listened to that, you know, adage earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause the E-Myth, they put it in, it's being a technician versus being, what's the other one? I always forget. I know the E-Myth is one I had a hard time getting into the E-Myth, you know, and it's now what you just said. It's like, yeah, that clicked, where I do read a lot of business books, and some of it's like, oh, this one says that, this one says this. And so the E-Myth has the technician and whatever else the other one is, which is the non-technician business guy. I think
it's manager.
Oh, sure.
Or technician, manager, or entrepreneur. Those are the three ones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so this one, like, basically says it, I mean, almost the exact same way, which is like, if you're working in your business, or like, you're not an entrepreneur. For us, I mean, like, not to be that guy, but it's like, it is a little bit different to be doing this in the type of industry that we're in, because it is so highly technical. It's hard to ever just like fully walk away from it.
Right. Well, especially when you're working with new things all the time. Like I was thinking during that chapter, I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to automate a lot of this and systematize a lot of it. But I'm like, you know, there are billions of dollars in VC money that are trying to figure this out too. Like it's not like I'm behind the 8 ball. It's like everyone's trying to sort this problem out all at the same time.
And I mean, it's like Lean or Six Sigma or whatever, where it's like perfection is the goal. It's like, it's not something that you do and you're just there. Like continuous improvement is continuous improvement because it just happens always. There's not like, well, we're lean now and call it a day. That's just not how it works. And so like striving to make the business as unreliant on us is the goal. Right. And so it's like that, how that looks is something we have to like, you know, think inwardly and like go and move forward. It's like, oh, we could be building. I mean, there's only so many processes you could build for a machine shop without having employees. Right. Like, at the end of the day, like it's still just you and Brad. So you guys can build all the processes in the world, but you're always going to be there pushing the button.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. But it gives us time to start. Like, it's nice for me to have Brad there because he does have such a different background to me that, you know, if I'm making processes, he's my first person to try them on, because it's like, you know, he kind of represents somebody we might hire that like might have a little bit of manufacturing experience, but not exactly what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Because he was like full blown production guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a bit different. And then
one lesson in the book that I have not heard in another book that I loved, was him talking about interviewing your customers, and the whole thing of sitting down with your customer and just saying, what about this business do you not like? How can I make your life easiger? Because those really are the things that make you special when you're talking to a customer.
Yeah. And that's one that I don't know, like I've kind of low key done that, like not as conscious as what he's talking about, where I'm like seeking out the conversation, but it just kind of like, just the type of business that I have is like, how can I help you going forward and stuff?
Well, and I think you've done a good job of pulling brands under your brand. Like, you know, he talks about go to your customers' vendors and interview them for leads or whatever, or ways that you can work together. And you've kind of done that by, you know, becoming a distributor of like work holding and tool holding and all of that, and become the one-stop shop for a lot of your customers.
Yeah. And the other part of that too is like, I've aligned myself, like I was just talking when I was talking with the boys last night, and they're like, so what do you do? Are you going to like go knock on doors? And it's like, no, I'm not going to go knock on doors. Like, but I have done a pretty good job of aligning myself with like Selway and like Ellison down in Arizona, and Methods and these jokers, like machine tool distributors. So it's like, I can't have the reach, but they can get the reach, and like they want to sell machines and I want to sell solutions. So we kind of have this like very symbiotic relationship there where it's like I can help your customer. Sometimes it gets a little silly where like one of the things, like one of a somewhat recent presentation I did, it's like a distributor brought me in. Like I did a whole rant plan for them because they're like, this is going to be pretty intense and like we don't have any capability for this in house. So I did it. I selected the machines that I thought were good enough. They're Haas's, but it's like we're trying to hit like 3/4 of a millimeter true position, it's like it's gonna be fine. Then they're not like crazy big. So they bring me in and they do this and like it looks good. And then they're like, so we think we're thinking about going with a different machine tool, like altogether, but we still want you on that project. And it's like, why are you putting me in this position? This is so weird. Like,
why did you ask my opinion if you're not going to listen to it?
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, like it is such a bananas. And it's like, especially because like it's not like they're going with like a higher end machine. It's like moving away from a Haas and going to like a YCM or something. And it's like, okay, so you're gonna spend like $50,000 to $100,000 more for a machine because it's got a fan control, or I don't like what's happening here. I don't get it. I mean, people do interesting stuff,
Yeah, that's what they want.
Yeah.
One thing I struggled with was when he was talking about interviewing your customers' vendors. I was like, I don't know, like can't interview an anodized shop and be like, introduce me to more customers kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was kind of struggling to think how I could apply that to my business. And right now, I think that my better shot is interviewing my current customers and just saying, what other things can I bring to the table?
Yeah. Cause you're, especially cause you have a fairly eclectic, group of customers in terms of the industry that they're in, right?
That's a pretty good word for it. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. And so it's the post processes and stuff like that. It's not like, I mean, you're probably dealing with some things, but do you typically deliver like assembled and finished parts, or do you just deliver mostly I guess it's a grab bag, right? Like,
yeah, it just depends on what they want. Sometimes we don't even anodize them depending on if it's like a weird process or if they're super slam for time or something. But, if I went to like an anodizer and was like, let me pick your brain, they'd be like, can you leave? Like, how about that? I have yet to meet an anodizer that is not just like running around like their head's on fire.
And I will say there's a pretty good shop. I mean, I don't know if this helps you at all, but he's up in Boise, Anodizers Inc. Justin, I think is his name. He's probably the most calm and collected anodizer guy I've ever met, and they do good work and they turn around stuff pretty quickly.
We've got a great anodizer. I mean, that's a good lead though for anybody listening, because I know everyone's always looking for a new anodizer.
Yeah.
Like, I really love my anodizer, but I don't think that talking to him is ever going to lead me more business is more what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any way we can partner better. Like, we've already talked to him about how we can make sure that we get perfect parts back from them. And like we do those kind of things. And like, I drop parts off in bins that are clearly labeled with the process and who they're from. And I have prints and I have POs, and like everything is multiple traceable to each other so that they can never get confused and stuff like that. But past that, I'm not really sure what more I can do with them.
Seems like you've kind of already done it as far as you can to help your customers, which is just being able to provide really good parts on the back end.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, but I do think that interviewing my customers and just kind of finding out other ways that I can better serve them is a really good lesson from the book, and something I will do.
Yeah. I was thinking about this as I like on my drive home, because like I was looking at like when I was checking out all the parts that the boys made, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of lathe parts in here, and it was very interesting to see. And I don't know if this quite applies, but it's like when you start building your customer base, are you looking like Like, have you kind of like honed it in where it's like they're not even asking you for work that you're not capable of doing, you know?
A little bit of that and a little bit of me just partnering with shops. Like
Yeah.
I have a few friends that I send work to if I know I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually learning like this month that is probably the best way to do it, I think, for me, is just to have a few shops that have capabilities I don't have that I feel comfortable sending stuff to. You know, like Easton, I send all my lathe work there pretty much, unless it's like there's a guy in town, Cade, that I send some stuff to if it's very quick turnaround or if Easton's busy. But like, again, I have a few shops that like if I get lathe work or I need a turned blank or something, those are my guys. And like, I know I can trust them. I know their quality is up to my standards, and that's where I go.
Yeah. Would you ever get a lathe? Is that just like not something?
I'm just not interested in it. And I feel like actually after reading this book, I just feel even more justified in that.
Sure.
Like he's, talking about really narrow down your focus and know what you are good at. And like, that's just not, like, I don't want to have to be good at two different types of machines. I want to focus on having all of the fixturing I need for mill work, all of that stuff, focus on getting as good and amazing at that as possible, and just subbing out the lathe work. Maybe in the future, if we're a bunch of people and it looks like we have a ton of it coming through, but like, I just don't see enough of it as to where that makes any sense.
Yeah, basically do the whole like automate the milling to the point where it's just like running itself, and then it's like, all right, let's actually bring some of this and go after this work now that we're just printing money.
Yeah, exactly. Or just have a good partner for it. Like I'd much rather, it's so much easier to farm out work that you don't do well when times are busy, and then if times get lean, then I can figure it out. But like, I don't know. I feel pretty strongly that it makes so much more sense for me to just focus on being a fantastic mill shop and like just absolutely kill it there, and let people who are really good at the other stuff be really good at the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Interesting. Have you done a lot of turning? Not really?
No, not at all.
So fun.
My last job, the first turning job I ever programmed and ran was a 14.5-inch donut of 17.4 that we had to like make custom jaws for that technically shouldn't have even been on the chuck.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. I feel really, really good about this.
Yeah.
It all worked out, but like, it was just terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the most terrifying thing about a lathe is like, there's just so much more energy in your cuts because, you're spinning a lot. There's a lot of weight rotating. Right. And when it goes bad, it goes bad so fast.
Yeah. Well, and your work holding on a lathe, at least with like a 3-jaw or something, is actively going against what you want it to do.
Yeah.
It's actively trying to part. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But, if we needed one, we would get one. If somebody was like, hey, we want you to do production on this turn thingamabob, sure, consider it. But like, if nothing like that comes along, I'm going to keep focusing on mill stuff because that's, I think, just a better focus for our company right now.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because it was really interesting to talk to them, and they were showing me so many parts, and it's 3/4 of their trash part drawer was like, it's like, these are all lathe parts. And it's like, really? And it's like, yeah, it's like one up on a lathe, one up on a lathe, one up on a lathe, one up on a lathe. And it's like, oh, it's like, huh, I'd never thought of any of these as lathe parts because they have mill features,
Right.
And yeah, but it's like, that's so fast to do. And as I was leaving, like I was telling you, Sean was like, you just blew up our plans because we were talking about getting another robo drill. But they do so much work that they're looking at getting another machine to have more capacity. It's like, but if you're doing a lot of like, some of the shit is like, there's no milled features on that part, and you're doing it on like on a mill with like undercuts and like grooves and stuff, and it would be so easy to do on a lathe. It's like, okay. But
what I will say that like, if we were going to get something with turning capabilities, it's much more likely we would get a mill turn over a true lathe, like a Brother M series or something.
Yeah, I would never. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah, because like most of what we see is heavy mill features with a few lathe features, not heavy lathe features with a few mill features.
Yeah, for sure. And like I always go to just like, I mean, because I am a lathe guy, I've done a lot of turning. Like a cheap way to get into it, easy, like and a pretty easy way to get into it is, like Nakamura AS200L, or like what Easton has, which is like the SC300 or SC250 or whatever it is. 2 spindles, single turret, makes it cake. Because, like, I mean, you have a lathe over here, you have a lathe over there. Easy peasy, one channel.
Right.
Like, when you start adding the multiple channels, it seems confusing. It's really not. It's pretty, like, it's, if you break it down into, like, this turret can go here and there, and then this turret can go here and there, but it's not going to be doing all of those things. I mean, it can do a lot of stuff simultaneously, but it only does that if you tell it to do it. So just don't tell it to do anything that's going to scare you. Right.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. Man. But back to the two things that kind of hit me about the book were those the crystallizing your customer base, crystallizing what you're good at, which is something that, like, man, that was the other part that really hit me, which was the guys who are like, I have, like, my customers like me, like, I'm getting recommendations, I have like some rave reviews, we're doing good work, but it's like we're fucking broke,
right?
And it's like,
he talks about that a few times of like,
and
you're working 19-hour days and yet you're still broke, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my god, this guy's just like, it was like he was just fucking talking to me, because I mean, I've been working like 100-hour weeks, and it's like everything has been in service of the business, and now there's nothing left in the tank to be able to, like, I can't pull down, like, reach any further and just like make all this money come back that is going away. So now, like, I just need to, like, essentially stop, like not stop the business, but like stop working so much in service of not
customers that are bad.
Yeah, and customers that are bad, and like, and work that doesn't really fit and stuff, just because, like, can bring in money, where it's like, hey, we got some, like, there's some things that, like, oh, that should be pretty easy to do, but it ends up being like a hassle, because, like, how I look at it is like, I got 24 hours in a day, I could do this stuff, like I could work from this time to this time on this project, and then I can do this other thing. But it never works that way. Like, people want my time now, always, and that was the other, like, I can't what did he say, turning hours into dollars or something. And I was like, I say this all the time. It's like, all I have is my time. And so if I lose it, it's gone, and I can't make it back up. And like, so it's like, all I'm selling is myself. And it's like, fuck. Yeah. I'm having an existential crisis, I guess. It's not in a bad way. It's in like an okay way, because it's like, it's better to happen now, I think. And it kind of has been happening. I mean, we did that whole episode, like when we recorded like 2 episodes ago, the riding the ship one. It's like that kind of, this is just a continuation of that whole thing.
Yeah, it's an unexpected roadblock, but very much in the same vein. I think that the biggest things I took away are, trim any customer that's not serving your goals. Like, I think the way that he talked about laying out, I actually do want to download the workbook that he has, laying out your customers, evaluating them, and like giving them a score, and trimming the ones that are just clearly not serving the business.
Yeah.
And then, interviewing the customers you have left to really tailor your company and your services so that you are like literally the best of that thing. And that was the other thing I was trying to think of today, was he talks about rebranding so that you're not just another machine shop or another consulting firm or whatever. Yeah. And that's something I've been toying with. I don't have any ideas, but how do you rebrand, and how do you open up a new avenue that you're the only competition for?
Yeah, the 2 examples that he had, well, he brought it up with the solar guy, which was interesting, where he's like, we're a do everything general contractor, and then the guy was like holding himself to that, and he's like, I'm only doing that because I wrote that down. What a fucking idiot. And then he just stopped doing that. And then it was interesting, like, no, that's not the type of work that I do. And that's something that I've been like recently employing, which is like, I just need like a couple hours. And it's like, I'm going to disappoint you, I promise. Like, because you're going to want it like now. And it's like, I'm going to tell you it's going to take a week, because that 1 hour of work that needs to be done is going to take me a week to like fit it in somewhere.
Yeah.
So if it's not like and like, it's a weird thing to explain to customers, which is like how it's like an hourly thing versus a project. It's like the project is something that I can like hang my hat on. You being like, oh, like we need a couple hours here and a couple hours there. It's like, and then you do it and it's like, what are we accomplishing? I'm confused as like what we're trying to accomplish, and they can't tell me what they want to do. That's a very specific weird one. But then the other one was the guy who accidentally became like the lawyer for disabled people or something.
Yeah.
That was like such a cool one. And like, yeah, it's like, how do you do that for you guys?
Right. It's something that I definitely will continue to think on, because I think that we offer a unique enough service in terms of like our lead times and our attention to detail and to our customers' parts.
Yeah.
That I do think that there's a way to spin that to be in a class of our own. Well, I think that that's a great place to wrap up the book. Again, go read it. The Pumpkin Plan, Mike Michalowicz, worth reading. I really enjoyed this one. I'm glad you recommended it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
But listen to it. Don't read it.
Yeah.
I should say. Listen to it.
Yeah, definitely listen to it. The guy's funny. He like, it's I don't know if you're an audiobook guy, if you've ever read like Adam Carolla's books. He reads his own too, and he does a lot of like straight up like story time, and it's like he'll go on like multi-minute like just asides that are not in the book at all.
That's awesome.
And you're like, sick, nice.
I love
yeah. And so we are doing, what's the next one we're doing? Principles
by Ray Dalio. Thank you, Alex Curran, for recommending that on his last episode. I just downloaded the audiobook. It is also read by Ray Dalio. So yeah, we will talk about that one in a couple weeks.
Cool.
Hey, that brings me to the last two questions. What did you research this week?
What did I research this week? I was doing a lot. I was looking at my contracts a lot to see what's going on there. Just helped my sister secure a place in Arizona, so that was pretty cool. And what else? There was something. Had a lot of conversations about like brazing, because we're starting to wrap up our robotic brazing cell, and the big we're getting into like still in the phase of the guy who started this project left a lot of things on the table, and there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered that we're finally starting to answer, which is like how does the maintenance look and stuff like that. And dip brazing is just like a fascinating like they put a plate, they just like bolt a plate in there, and like as they dip, like it attracts all the junk to the plate, and it's something that they replace like every single day. They call it coiling, and they just like leave it in there, and it like sucks in like a lot of the impurities and stuff. It's
cool,
fucking weird. And then because of like we are automating the maintenance versus the maintenance being a very manual process, we can kind of do a lot of more interesting things. Like shit's hot. It's like 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, like 8,000 pounds of like molten salt.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so once a week or twice a week, they'll just like shove air driven propeller in there. And it just agitates it. So then they can come in with a scraper, and it's like, okay, well, and they're like, well, we pretty much like, because right now we just put it in there on one side, we just scrape the one side. It's like, oh, well, we designed the agitator to be on the robot with like a quick change thing. So it's like we could run a program where we can like move the whole thing around. And they're like, oh, and it's like, yeah, cool. And then the scraping, the wild thing about the scraping was it's like, how do you do it? And he's like, oh, I shove the scraper onto the electrode. And it's like, wait, really? And it's like, and then he's like, and I just use that to find it. And then I go down and it's like, all right, well, probably won't do that. But those electrodes are nuts. They're like 3 foot long, 3x3 Inconel, just
Jeez.
solid pieces of material. They're super expensive and they're consumable. They get eroded away. It's fucking wild. So just kind of like fired back up on the brazing stuff. Because we're probably about a month away from wrapping that project up. I think we have all the stuff bought and purchased, and we have to make some shit. Oh, my machine is running. That's another one.
Yes,
finally. I'm fucking in Massachusetts, so I can't go do anything. But the Cal Motion box shows up next week. Awesome. So we can, because it's a Yasnak and it's RS-232 only. So I got the LAN CNC version and a bunch of after I heard you talking about that on like an earlier episode, would have got the LAN one, and it's like, yeah, because it has a USB capability also, I think. And so it's like, and it's the same exact price. So we'll do that. It's a
no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So we should be making parts on that thing super soon. What about you?
Exciting.
Yeah.
I have been looking up a few things. So I think I talked about last time I was getting the AMS for my 3D printer, the multicolor thing. And so that showed up like the day after I got back, which was fantastic. I got to play with that. There's a 3D printed mod you can do because like it fits their spools of filament very well, but doesn't fit some of the stuff that I use. And so there's a guy who designed a whole bottom tray for it that you take out the stock one, replace all the motors in there, like swap everything over, and then it fits wider spools. So cool. I've got to do that soon. I've also been looking into nice cameras, like video cameras, and trying not to rabbit hole too much on them, because I think I told you we got a quote for anybody who hasn't seen it, go over to NH Micro's website, Josh Hacko's, their business's website. He has a fantastic video. Like, it's just so cool and well done on their homepage. And I want stuff like that for our LinkedIn and for Instagram and whatever, and just more marketing material. And so we reached out to a production company locally and got a quote that was just very high, at least as far as I'm concerned, for what we asked for, very high. And we reached out to another company, thankfully, and got a much lower one. But I'm on the fence. I was talking to Zach from Breaking Taps and might get a smaller Blackmagic pocket cinema camera, because I can get one for not terrible amount of money and get a few lights and just be able to shoot little shorts. Yeah. And it's an investment that will continue to provide value versus like a one-time, oh, here's a couple grand and I get a couple, 30-second segments back. So, but I also don't need another hobby or more work. So
yeah,
I'm on that fence of like, how much do I want to go down this? I downloaded DaVinci Resolve last night and was playing around with some footage I already had on my computer just to see the workflow and if it's something that I think I could pick up reasonably easy.
Okay.
So I'm still on the fence there. I mean, I'm looking over to my other monitor where I have eBay listings pulled up of cameras. So it's not like I'm not looking at it, but I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening there. I mean, everyone will see whatever comes out of it one way or the other. So look for that. But yeah, I think those are the two biggest things I've been researching. I think that's about it for the most part.
Nice. Cool.
Well, and then other question, what have you been working on as a person? I mean, obviously you've had lots.
Yeah. Fuck. The big one, I guess, is, I mean, I kind of already hit all the high points, but it's just kind of being like having like a more steely resolve, I guess, and like trying to get through most of these like issues that like frankly I created for myself without without like totally losing my shit, which is tough. But yeah, I'm just like kind of, I guess being like more honest with myself about the whole situation and everything, and just doing what I can to get through everything in a way that makes sense. Yeah, I made a lot. It's so fascinating. Like I'll say it, like I've been saying it for a while. It's just like so fascinating how you could make decisions like damn near a year ago that will continue to rear their head positively or negatively. And so I guess like that is something where I guess like the big one is I make a lot of snappy decisions, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's like we probably should have not been so hasty with that one. And so I guess that kind of goes into the triage of decision making, where sometimes you need to be fast and sometimes you should probably just chill out and like think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think those are great ones. I working on a little bit of burnout. Like I came back from Germany super hyped to work.
Yeah.
Like I'm very much feeling motivated to work on the business, and then like getting back and just having to make parts. I was like,
yeah.
But like, despite both Brad and I feeling that way, I think we both came back with a cold too, which really didn't help morale for either of us. We had a really productive week, first week back, but it was just kind of a struggle. Like both of us, like it would get to like 2 or 3 o'clock and we'd both be like, is it only 3 o'clock? Like, are you kidding me? Like just, fighting hard.
Here.
Yeah. So I think it'll be better this next week, and I'm just about clear of my cold, and I think he is too. So that'll help a lot.
Nice. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well,
enjoying that fucking AZ weather. It's getting hot, right?
Yeah, it is. But I don't know. It is what it is. We traded for really nice winter, so I'll take that, I guess.
Yeah.
Still no update on the shop front. The 3 potential shops that we were like, oh yeah, one of these will be it. I get back and email the real estate agent and he goes, oh, all 3 are under contract.
Fuck.
It's like, cool. One of them that I thought was like the most promising, he goes, oh yeah, there's some big nationwide corporation that's looking at a 10-year lease, and they're like discussing that right now. I'm like, well, I can't compete with that. Like, I'm not going to sign a 10-year lease. Sorry, buddy. Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So
wow.
Oh, we're just keep looking.
We should do the next episode in person.
If you're in AZ, let's do it.
I can make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Sick.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for discussing the book, sharing some fairly personal stuff. I know it's going to all work out, but I know it's still rough.
Yeah, that's something I find it a lot better to just be like, that's like the honesty thing is like, it's something actually that comes up in the book where it's like, yeah, I'm doing great. I just got the contract, and it's like, really, you're just a ball of stress. Like pretending like things are fine doesn't actually, like, you can only gaslight yourself so much. And it's like speaking the truth and like speaking these things into like my internal thoughts like into existence always helps me personally. And like sometimes you might like say too much or whatever, but I don't know. I find it better to share. Also, I've gotten the feedback where it's from like people from this like podcast or whatever that's like, it's like, thanks for being like honest about the situation. I find it better to just be like, maybe I'm somebody out there might be feeling what I'm feeling, and it could just be like what gets them through the day or whatever. It's like,
yeah, no, totally.
You know how it is.
Well, it is appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you to the new Patreon members, Cody, Jay, and Guy. Thanks for joining. Thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.